The Duchess of Midnight Part 2. Chapter 14, Secrets of the Chapel. The next morning came without color. The sky was pale as bone, the moors outside Ravensmoor Hall choked in fog so thick it swallowed sound. Even the staff walked more quietly, casting anxious glances toward the western halls, toward Alessia Holden. They could feel it. Something had been stirred. Alessia spent the day in study, unable to eat, unable to sleep. The prophecy pulsed in her thoughts like a heartbeat she couldn't silence. The hidden verse at the bottom haunted her. Beware the kiss of false fire. The hunter wears a heart he did not earn. Trust the one who bleeds with silence. By twilight, her feet carried her to the one place left untouched, the sealed chapel beneath the manor. She had walked past it 100 times. Tonight, she stood before its iron door and placed her palm on the center stone. The lock clicked open. The air inside was cold and ancient. The walls wept with moss and old memory. Candles flickered to life as she passed, unlit, yet glowing. As though the place remembered her blood. At the altar sat an open book, black with age, its pages brittle and inked in blood. A circle of runes surrounded the dais. Symbols she now recognized. Words from the grimoire. Words she could now speak. She stepped inside the circle. And the world changed. Smoke rose from the corners of the chapel. The air thickened and shimmered like water, and slowly, painfully, a figure emerged. She wore a gown of ash and silver. Her hair flowed like midnight. Her eyes, identical to Alessia's, stared through her as though through time. It was Althea Holden. But not in flesh. In spirit. Bound by the circle. "Welcome, Alessia," she said. "We finally meet, descendant of my ruin." Alessia's voice trembled. "Are you a ghost?" "I am memory. Regret. Fire that never dies." Althea circled the altar, her bare feet never touching the ground. "I've waited for you." "You cursed him," Alessia said. "I loved him," Althea snapped. "And when he rejected what we could become together, immortals, gods, I was cast aside. Burned by men. Betrayed by him." Alessia narrowed her eyes. "So you cursed him to eternal life, and condemned your own bloodline to carry that burden?" Althea's expression twisted. "I gave your line power. I didn't ask for power." "No," Althea said softly. "But you'll need it. Because the blood moon is coming. And when it does, you will face the choice I once faced." Althea reached out her ghostly hand. "Let me show you what awaits." Alessia hesitated, then placed her hand into Althea's. Vision surged. She saw Nicholas, chained and weeping beneath a crumbling chapel. She saw herself, in a red bridal gown, lips stained with blood. She saw Baron Thorn, holding a dagger to her throat, his face torn between love and duty. She saw Ravensmoor burning, its towers crashing into the sea. And she saw a child, hers, eyes glowing gold like the fire of the hollow flame. Then darkness. Alessia collapsed to the chapel floor. Althea's voice echoed above her. "The curse will not simply vanish. It must be paid for. With a soul." "Whose?" Alessia gasped. "That is what the prophecy will force you to decide." As the vision faded and the chapel returned to stillness, Althea stood at the edge of the circle. "One last truth," she whispered. "You are stronger than I ever was. But beware, Alessia. Love can be a curse. Or a salvation. The wrong choice, and it will destroy you all." Alessia blinked, and Althea was gone. The chapel fell silent once more. But the truth now echoed inside Alessia's very bones. She was not only the last of the hollow flame. She was its weapon. And someone would have to die. Chapter 15, The Seduction Spell. The day after her descent into the chapel, Alessia Holden avoided her reflection. She had seen too much, visions of fire, of sacrifice, of blood-soaked vows and a ruined Ravensmoor. The prophecy weighed heavily in her hands, but it was Althea's voice, silken and sharp, that echoed in her mind. One soul must be given. One heart must break. She couldn't sleep. She couldn't breathe. She needed air, space. And perhaps, answers from someone who didn't hide behind ancient guilt. Near dusk, Alessia slipped outside, into the mist-laced garden paths. Ravensmoor loomed behind her, its towers casting long shadows across the land. Her footsteps led her to the old hunting lodge near the tree line, a place seldom used. Smoke curled from its chimney. Inside, she found Baron Thorn Ashcroft, lounging by a fire, pouring himself a glass of wine. "I was wondering how long it would take you to come find me," he said, rising with that disarming, predatory grace. "You were watching the ballroom," Alessia said. "You saw her." "Althea." Thorn nodded. "Hard to forget the face of a ghost wearing your skin. She said I'd have to choose between love and power. That someone would have to die." Thorn's jaw tightened. "Then she told you the truth." There was a long silence. And then Thorn crossed the room, slowly, carefully, eyes locked on hers. "I know what Nicholas has told you," he said softly. "But there's more. Always more. He wears remorse like a cloak, but never takes responsibility for what he created." "He loved her once," Alessia replied. "And she turned that love into a weapon." Thorn tilted his head. "And now you're holding the blade." Alessia turned away, suddenly cold. "I don't want to be part of this war." He stepped behind her. "But you are. You were born into it." His fingers brushed a strand of her hair aside. "And unlike him, I'm not asking you to suffer for someone else's sins." Alessia turned to face him. His green eyes were searching, his mask stripped away, no arrogance, no performance. Just a man standing before a woman he desperately wanted to save. "Come away with me," Thorn said, voice barely above a whisper. "Leave Ravensmoor. Leave him. Before the blood moon rises. Before fate ties you to something that will eat you from the inside out." "And go where?" "Anywhere," he said. "Paris. Venice. The desert. I'll protect you. I'll help you bury the prophecy so deep even the stars forget it." And then he kissed her. It was not the same as Nicholas's kiss, silent and reverent. Thorn's kiss was fire. Sharp. Hungry. Real. Alessia's heart thundered in her chest. For a single, searing moment, she allowed it. Then. A sudden snap echoed through the room. Magic surged beneath her skin. Alessia pulled away, breathless. Thorn reached out again, but she stepped back, eyes wide. "You," she said, voice cracking. "You used a spell." Thorn's expression froze. "I didn't." The kiss. It wasn't just a kiss. There was a charm woven into it. A binding. Thorn's voice turned cold. "It wasn't meant to control you. It was a ward. I needed to protect you. I needed to know. You needed to own me." She backed away, her hand glowing faintly gold, the hollow flame rising unbidden from her palm. "You said you loved me." "I do," he cried. "But I also know what Nicholas is. What he will become. I'm trying to stop you from making the same mistake she did." Tears pricked at Alessia's eyes. "You didn't trust me to choose for myself." "I couldn't," Thorn said, voice breaking. "Because I knew. I'd lose. She turned and fled, the magic burning in her spine. The prophecy's warning whispered again in her mind. Beware the kiss of false fire. She returned to Ravensmoor with the sky bleeding dusk. As she entered the grand corridor, she stopped, because Nicholas Ravensmoor was already waiting. He didn't ask where she'd been. He simply said, "You're shaking." She looked at him, stunned and furious and heartsick. "I kissed him." Nicholas swallowed. "I know. I think he loves me. I know that too. I don't know what I feel." And then her voice cracked. "But I think. I need you more." He didn't touch her. Didn't rush. He simply opened his arms. And she collapsed into them. Chapter 16, The Duke's Despair. Alessia Holden awoke in her bed just before dawn, her body heavy with magic and memory. The events of the night before clung to her like ash. The kiss. The spell. Thorn's betrayal, however well-intentioned. And then Nicholas's silence, his arms open, no judgment, only sorrow. But now he was gone. The sun had not yet risen when Alessia noticed the west wing's doors stood open for the first time since her arrival. No servants lingered in the halls. The silence was oppressive. Her bare feet carried her down the long corridor, past cold portraits and heavy drapes. She reached Nicholas's chamber, a vast, Gothic space filled with velvet, shadow, and candlelight that never fully extinguished. But the room was nearly empty. Only a letter remained, sealed in black wax. She opened it with trembling hands. Alessia. I have tried, with all my strength, to resist what I am and what I want. You have made that resistance unbearable. You are not safe while I remain near. Althea's spirit will not rest until her curse is fulfilled. Thorn will not stop until my body is ash. And you? You deserve more than a creature made of dusk and guilt. I go to meet the dawn. Perhaps I can barter one last act of mercy from this cursed soul. Do not follow. N.R. Alessia's heart stopped. Meet the dawn. That could mean only one thing. She didn't wait. She ran. Through the grand entryway, into the fog-drenched morning. Her slippers soaked with dew, her cloak forgotten behind her. The sky had begun to pale. Ahead, at the edge of the cliffs beyond Ravensmoor, she saw a dark silhouette. Nicholas, standing at the cliff's edge, his back to her, coat fluttering in the rising wind. "Nicholas," she screamed. He didn't turn. "I told you not to follow." "I never listen," she said, breathless. "You should know that by now." He exhaled. "It's almost time." Alessia approached, stopping just short of him. "You came here to die." "No," he said softly. "I came here to free you. The prophecy demands sacrifice. Let it be mine." Her voice broke. "That's not your choice. It's the only thing I can still give you. A clean slate. A future that doesn't end in shadows and blood." She stepped forward and grabbed his hands. "I don't want a future without you." Nicholas's composure shattered. "You don't understand what I am." "No," she whispered. "I understand exactly what you are." Her voice trembled with truth and defiance. "You are the only man who's ever seen me, not as Althea's heir, not as a witch, not as a weapon, but as a woman. You didn't want my power. You didn't try to bind me. You didn't lie. You were just there. Silent. Steady. Mine." Tears streaked down her cheeks. "If you step into that light, I will follow you." Nicholas turned to her fully now, stricken. "You'd burn." "Then burn with me," she said. But just as the sun broke over the horizon, it didn't touch him. They both stood in the light. And Nicholas Ravensmoor did not burn. He looked up, stunned. The wind fell still. The curse shifted. Alessia stared at him in wonder. The prophecy. Something changed. He stared at her like a man seeing his first sunrise. You changed it, he whispered. With your choice. They stood together in the first sunlight Ravensmoor had seen in 2 centuries. But both knew. This was only a reprieve. The blood moon had not yet risen. And Althea would not be quiet for long. Chapter 17, The Blood Moon Rises. The sunrise over Ravensmoor was brief. By late afternoon, the sky dimmed unnaturally, bleeding into hues of rust and crimson. The wind had died. The trees stood still. Animals in the woods had gone silent. Nature was holding its breath. The villagers locked their doors. Even the bravest servants at the manor muttered prayers. Somewhere in the attic, a cradle rocked on its own. The blood moon had begun its climb. And with it, fate. Alessia Holden sat cross-legged in her chamber, the grimoire open before her. Its pages flipped on their own, as if guided by unseen hands. Symbols glowed red like fresh wounds. Her blood pulsed with the hollow flame. The final page revealed a new passage, one that had never appeared before. Tonight, the choice is sealed. One shall fall. One shall rise. The blood that was cursed must be claimed or broken. Flame must face shadow. Or the realm shall drown in night. Her hands trembled. Downstairs, Nicholas Ravensmoor stood before the long mirror in his private chamber. For the first time in centuries, he cast a partial reflection, blurred, but there. He raised his hand. It wavered like smoke. His body was changing. Not mortal. Not vampire. Something in between. The curse is unraveling, he murmured. And it's killing me. He swayed slightly. And behind him, the candles flickered red. Alessia descended into the chapel again, desperate for answers. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, Althea's ghost appeared, wreathed in smoke and flame. Do not mourn him yet, she whispered. What do you want? Alessia asked. To finish what I began, Althea said calmly. You and I are not so different. We both loved him. We both bled for him. But I refused to give everything without price. You destroyed him. I awakened him, Althea hissed. And now, you must do the same. Or lose him forever. Outside, beneath the crimson moon, Baron Thorn Ashcroft approached the manor's gates. He had not slept. He had not hunted. He had only watched. And waited. When Alessia came into view on the balcony, he called to her. Come down. She met him in the courtyard, the moon casting eerie light on his face. I've seen the scroll, he said. I know what the prophecy demands. Then you know I can't run, she said. Thorn's eyes burned. You can still choose me. We can destroy him together. Break the curse. Save your soul. Alessia stepped back. You would kill him? Thorn's voice cracked. I would kill for you. Tears welled in her eyes. You say you love me, she whispered. But your love comes with a dagger. Thorn stepped closer. Because I'd rather see you alive and hating me, than dead in his arms. He reached out, but she didn't take his hand. I'm sorry, she said. I won't make the same choice Althea did. She turned away, leaving him in the red-lit dark. At the stroke of midnight, the moon turned completely red. Ravensmoor trembled. A crack split the earth behind the chapel. Black vines writhed from the ground like veins of some great beast. The air grew hot. Alessia ran to Nicholas's chamber, only to find him collapsed on the floor, skin pale, mouth stained with blood. "Nicholas," she cried, falling to her knees beside him. He looked up at her weakly. "The prophecy, it's calling." She held his face in her hands. "I'm not ready." "You don't have to be," he whispered. "You only have to choose." As the wind howled through broken windows, and the blood moon cast its glow across the moors, the hollow flame rose in Alessia's veins like molten gold. And somewhere below, in the chapel ruins, Althea's spirit smiled. Because the end was coming. And someone would not survive the night. Chapter 18, The Ritual Begins. The bells of Ravensmoor Chapel had not tolled in 2 centuries. But tonight, as the blood moon hovered at its peak, they began to ring, slow, low, and mournful. The curse was tightening. The prophecy had awakened fully. The choice could no longer be delayed. Alessia Holden stood before the mirror in her chamber, trembling fingers clasping a wedding gown of deepest crimson, sent by no servant, requested by no soul. And yet, it had appeared. It fit perfectly. And she knew exactly where to go. Before she left, Alessia wrote 2 letters. One, to Nicholas, sealed with a wax drop of the hollow flame sigil. "If I die, it will be for love. If I live, it will be for the same." 2, to Thorn, left on his dagger. "You were right to fear love. But I was braver to choose it." Alessia descended the chapel steps alone, the red train of her gown trailing like spilled blood. The candles lining the staircase lit themselves as she passed. The wind, though sealed underground, howled as if mourning her arrival. The crypt beneath the chapel had been prepared. A circle of salt and ash, traced by invisible hands. Ancient runes, glowing faintly on the stone walls. At the altar, Nicholas Ravensmoor, already waiting. He was dressed in a black formal coat, lined with silver. His eyes held both devastation and reverence as he turned to see her. "I prayed you wouldn't come," he said. "I never learned how not to," she answered. As the hour struck midnight, the air shimmered, and the crypt filled with silent guests. Ghosts of Ravensmoor. Past lovers. Cursed lords. And at the back of the room, Althea Holden, veiled and quiet, her arms crossed, a faint smirk on her lips. Nicholas's jaw clenched, but Alessia kept her gaze forward. "She can't touch me now," Alessia whispered. "Not unless I let her." The altar was lit by candlelight, flickering in red and gold. Between them stood an ancient priest, his body more shadow than flesh, summoned by old rites long forgotten. He opened the ceremony in an ancient tongue Alessia now understood as if it were her first language. Then Nicholas spoke. "I take you, Alessia of the hollow flame. Not as salvation, but as my equal. Not to heal me, but to burn with me. If the curse must have blood, let it take mine. But not before I love you once more." Alessia, tears on her cheeks, replied. "I take you, Nicholas of the night. Not to change you, but to bind myself freely to you. If the curse demands a soul, let it be mine. For love is not a life spared, but a life given willingly." The priest held out a chalice, black stone carved with wolves and roses. Nicholas hesitated, but Alessia took it. She drank first. The liquid was warm and metallic, blood, yes, but not just that. It was ancient memory. Pain. Power. Flame. It ran down her throat like truth. Nicholas drank second. And the air changed. The salt circle ignited. The runes burned brighter. The ground shook. Alessia gasped, her body seizing as the hollow flame surged through her. Her hands glowed gold, her veins like rivers of fire. She fell into Nicholas's arms. Her skin turned pale. Her lips lost their color. She looked up at him with a strange serenity. "It's okay," she whispered. "Let me go." And then her heart stopped. Nicholas screamed her name into the stone crypt. The guests, ghostly and forgotten, bowed their heads. Even Althea closed her eyes. Alessia Holden was dead. And the curse was broken. Chapter 19, A Crypt Wedding. Silence. The kind that isn't empty, but impossibly full, of grief, of reverence, of a love too immense to speak. The salt circle had dimmed. The runes had cooled. The air was still. And Alessia Holden lay lifeless in Nicholas Ravensmoor's arms, her crimson gown pooled like a bloodstain across the stone altar floor. Her chest no longer rose. Her heartbeat had stilled. She was gone. And yet, she glowed faintly, as if the hollow flame within her had not been extinguished, but sealed. Nicholas knelt over her, silent. Not sobbing. Not weeping. Just shattered. "Alessia," he whispered, brushing hair from her cheek. "You were never meant to be the one who paid for my curse." He bowed his head to hers. The ghostly guests stood motionless. Even Althea's spirit, usually smug and seething, was still. The curse had lifted. Nicholas could feel it, its hold on his body had unraveled. For the first time in centuries, his heart began to beat again. But it came with no joy. Not without her. Nicholas drew his own dagger from his coat, silver-edged, forged by flame, etched with his family crest. He pressed the blade to his palm and let his blood spill onto the stone. "I give you my soul," he said, voice shaking. "Not to save you. Not to break the curse. But because you are my eternity, and I will not live 1 second more in a world that does not contain you." He leaned down, his blood staining her dress, and kissed her lips one last time. It was not desperation. It was vow. And the hollow flame answered. It roared from Alessia's chest, shooting upward in golden fire, surrounding them both in light so bright the ghostly congregation vanished into smoke. Nicholas stumbled back. Alessia's body levitated inches from the ground, her arms outstretched. The flame spiraled around her like a crown, a cocoon, a torch. And then she gasped. Her eyes flew open, golden. Her lungs filled with air. Her body arched. She screamed, not in pain, but power. She collapsed to her knees. Her dress, once crimson, now shimmered with iridescent black and gold. Her skin radiated light. Her eyes glowed with the eternal fire of her lineage. Nicholas fell to his knees before her. "You came back," he whispered. Alessia touched his face, eyes filled with tears. "You brought me back." "No," he said. "You chose to return. Because you are not of this world anymore." She looked around the empty crypt, sensing the stillness where spirits had stood. "Where did they go?" "They were released," Nicholas said. "They were watching their curse lift, and their queen rise." The ghostly priest remained, flickering, his robes shifting between light and shadow. He raised his hand. "Then by blood, by sacrifice, and by flame, I declare this bond eternal." A final ring appeared, formed not of metal, but of living flame. It hovered, then cooled into a band of obsidian and gold on Alessia's hand. Nicholas looked down. His own ring was silver threaded with red, a reminder of the curse that once bound him, and the love that had broken it. They stood hand in hand, hearts beating in sync for the first time. She was no longer mortal. And he was no longer cursed. Together, they were something other. Something more. Above the chapel, Baron Thorn Ashcroft stood in the fog, having witnessed the entire spectacle through the cracked stained glass. He turned away, sword still sheathed, face unreadable. "She's not hers anymore," he whispered. "And she's no longer mine." He disappeared into the night, unseen. Chapter 20, Death of the Witch. The air in the crypt had stilled. The ghostly congregation was gone. The sacred fire of the hollow flame no longer burned wild and untamed, it pulsed gently in Alessia Holden's chest, steady and alive. But the ritual was not yet complete. One presence still lingered. Watching. Waiting. Althea Holden. As Nicholas helped Alessia rise, the shadows twisted behind the altar. From them stepped Althea, her form half-transparent, her beauty uncanny, eternal, and cruel. Her eyes were filled with something new, not vengeance, not fire, but desperation. "So," she said quietly, "you've done what I could not. You've tamed the flame." Alessia turned, her voice calm but resolute. "I didn't tame it. I embraced it." "You think love is enough?" Althea said, her tone sharpening. "That you can live above the price we paid to get here?" Nicholas stepped forward, but Alessia stopped him with a hand. This was her battle. "You cursed him," Alessia said. "You cursed this land, our name, our power. All because he would not become the monster you wanted." "I gave everything for him," Althea hissed. "I was hunted. Burned. Torn apart. And he stood by, watching." "You chose destruction," Alessia replied, voice shaking with both pain and strength. "I choose something different." Althea laughed bitterly. "There is no different. The hollow flame devours us all. Sooner or later, it will take your mind, your body, your soul." "No," Alessia interrupted. "Because I won't let it." The crypt trembled. Althea's spirit rose into the air, arms outstretched as shadow and fire spiraled around her. Her form distorted, part woman, part wraith, her eyes like twin furnaces. "I will not be erased," she shrieked. "If I cannot live through vengeance, I will live through you." A blast of flame surged toward Alessia. But she stood firm. Her eyes flared gold, her hands igniting with the hollow flame's light, not uncontrolled now, but purified. Guided by love. Bound by choice. She held her hands up. And the fire split around her like parted water. "Althea Holden," Alessia said, her voice ringing with sacred power. "I release you from this world. From your pain. From me." The runes on the crypt walls glowed again, responding to her will. Althea screamed, her form beginning to unravel into ribbons of smoke and light. "You will regret this," she howled. "I already have," Alessia whispered. And then, she cast the final spell. "By blood reclaimed, by fire made clean. Depart this realm. Let peace be seen." A wave of light burst from her palms, washing over the crypt. It struck Althea mid-scream. And with a final echo, the witch was gone. Silence fell again. The air was clean. Still. Warm. Nicholas approached slowly. "She's gone." Alessia nodded. "She was only ever a reflection of what I could become, if I let grief turn to hate." He looked at her with awe. "You're not the girl who arrived at Ravensmoor." "No," she said softly. "I'm the woman who burned and lived." Later that night, Alessia buried the ashes that remained beneath a flowering tree in the chapel garden. A single lily bloomed from the ground moments after. Nicholas stood beside her, silent. "She wasn't just a villain," Alessia said. "She was a warning." "And you were her redemption," he replied. Chapter 21, The Resurrection Flame. Dawn came quietly to Ravensmoor Hall, not with a blaze, but a hush. The sky over the moors, once choked with clouds and blood moon haze, opened into a pale gold horizon. It was the first true morning the manor had seen in centuries. Inside the chapel, a flame still flickered in the center of the old crypt. It hovered above the stone altar, not wild, not wrathful, but alive. And inside it pulsed the last vestige of what had once been called the curse. But now, it had become something else. The resurrection flame. In the chapel garden, Alessia Holden stood barefoot in the grass. Her eyes were closed. Her body no longer felt entirely human, and not entirely immortal. She was in between. Her senses were sharp. She could hear the bees from the west hives, feel the heat of the earth's core humming faintly beneath her feet, sense every heartbeat in the house, including Nicholas's. She opened her eyes. The hollow flame was still inside her. But it no longer burned. It thrived. Not as vengeance. Not as curse. But as something wholly new, a legacy rewritten through love. Inside the manor, Nicholas Ravensmoor stood before the full-length mirror in his chamber. For the first time in centuries, the mirror reflected him. Clearly. No flickering edges. No ghostly haze. Just a man, tired, scarred, freed. His hands shook slightly as he touched the glass, as if afraid it would all vanish. Then he felt it, her presence. She stepped into the doorway. "You're still here," he said softly. "So are you," she replied. They walked together into the solarium, where sunlight spilled through leaded glass. Nicholas turned to her. "You're different." "I'm still me," Alessia said. "But, the fire has changed. I can feel every life it once destroyed. And now, every life I could protect with it." He studied her. "Are you immortal?" "I don't think so," she said. "But I'm no longer bound by time like before." Nicholas gave a half-smile. "You've always defied expectations." She stepped closer. "We both have." That evening, Alessia returned to the chapel one final time. In her hand she held the grimoire, its final page glowing softly. The resurrection flame still hovered in the crypt, pulsing like a heartbeat. But now, it welcomed her. She placed the grimoire beneath it. The flame lowered itself like a whisper and set the cover ablaze, but the book did not burn. It absorbed the fire instead, becoming a vessel of living power. The hollow flame no longer needed to destroy. It could now protect. Nicholas joined her there, his hand finding hers. "You're not cursed anymore," she said. "You're something new." "So are you," he replied. "Will you stay here?" "I will stay," Alessia said, "but not to hide. To guard." Ravensmoor was once a tomb. "I will make it a sanctuary." He nodded, then asked, with rare humility. "And, will you stay with me?" She smiled, warm, certain. "Forever, if you'll let me." That night, they stood in the moonlit chapel, hand in hand, watching the resurrection flame settle into the altar's heart. It would burn there for generations. Not to punish. Not to threaten. But to remind the world that love, when chosen freely, could unmake even the oldest curses. Chapter 22, The Baron's Farewell. The blood moon had passed. The curse had lifted. The hollow flame had found peace. But not all hearts at Ravensmoor were whole. Some still wandered the edge of shadow, carrying grief instead of love, wounds instead of magic. One such heart belonged to Baron Thorn Ashcroft. Alessia found him in the old hunting lodge at dawn, his silhouette framed by a cracked window, the fire at his back casting sharp angles across his features. He was packing. A single trunk stood open. His red coat lay folded atop a stack of letters, unsealed, unmailed. "You're leaving," Alessia said. Thorn didn't turn immediately. I have no place here now. You were part of this, she said softly. Even if you don't want to admit it. At that, he turned. His expression was controlled, but not cold. Don't give me grace, he said. I kissed you with a spell. I tried to pull you away from the one thing that made you stronger. But you didn't destroy me, she replied. You challenged me. You made me ask what I truly wanted. That matters. He looked at her for a long time. Then, I loved you. I think part of me still does. I know. He sat on the edge of the bed, shoulders tense. All my life, he said, I was raised to believe that monsters wear sharp teeth and long coats. But Nicholas, he wept like a man. Alessia stepped closer. Then stop hunting shadows. Start protecting the light. He smirked, bitter and soft. I wouldn't know how. You'll figure it out. Later that day, Alessia found a sealed envelope placed at the manor gates, addressed simply. To A.H. Inside was a short note, written in Thorn's steady, sharp hand. I never learned how to be the hero. You didn't need one anyway. Keep the flame. Keep him. Keep choosing. Thorn Ashcroft. Enclosed with the letter was his silver-bladed dagger, sheathed in velvet. Not as a weapon. But as a gift. Outside Ravensmoor, Thorn walked into the morning mist alone. No carriage. No horse. Just the road. Just the quiet. And perhaps, for the first time, a kind of peace. He whispered once to himself, without regret. She burned brighter than I ever did. And then he vanished into the fog. When Alessia told Nicholas of Thorn's departure, he nodded with a quiet reverence. He could have killed me, Nicholas said. But he didn't, Alessia replied. Then perhaps there's hope for him yet. Chapter 23, A New Dawn at Ravensmoor. For the first time in generations, Ravensmoor Hall opened its windows. Sunlight streamed in, real sunlight. Not the gray, filtered light that had haunted the manor for centuries, but golden, warm, and alive. It touched every surface, ancient tapestries, dusty chandeliers, cracked mirrors now made whole. The curse was broken. But more than that, the sorrow was lifting. Alessia Holden stood on the grand staircase, barefoot, the train of her new gold-trimmed gown trailing behind her like light on stone. Below her, the household bustled with energy she had never witnessed before. Servants laughed in the corridors. Miss Cora skipped down the hallway without her usual solemn hush. Even Mr. Withrow, the butler carved from stone, cracked a dry smile when Alessia passed. The hall was no longer haunted. It was finally a home. Outside, the moor bloomed. The cursed soil that had refused harvest for decades now sprouted wildflowers, poppies, lavender, golden primrose. The trees on the estate grew fuller. Birds returned to nest in the eaves. One of the kitchen girls swore she saw a white stag at the edge of the woods that morning. Others reported laughter in the wind. Alessia knew what it was, the land itself healing. The hollow flame had not only resurrected her. It had resurrected Ravensmoor. Nicholas found her later that afternoon in the library, now filled with new books, fresh drapery, and light pouring through stained glass. You never did finish your lessons with Miss Cora, he said. Alessia smiled. She's teaching me now. I asked her to tell me how children see the world. I want to understand it before we reshape it. Reshape? I want Ravensmoor to be a sanctuary, for all who need refuge. Magic or mortal? Nicholas's eyes darkened, not with fear, but with awe. You sound like a queen. I'm not, she said. Not anymore. He stepped closer. Then what are you? She looked up at him and whispered. A guardian. They walked the east garden together, hand in hand. The rose bushes that had withered in Althea's time now bloomed in deep crimson and pale silver. Nicholas paused at the edge of the reflecting pool. "Do you ever regret it?" he asked. "Giving everything up. Your soul. Your death. Your flame." Alessia looked out at the hills. "I didn't give it up. I became it." Then she turned to him and smiled. "You're asking the wrong question. What is the right one? Do I regret choosing you?" Nicholas's breath caught, but she answered it for him with a kiss. The villagers were invited inside for a feast. Musicians played in the long hall. Children danced where ghosts once roamed. Wine flowed. Bread baked. Fireplaces burned warm instead of ominous. And atop the tower, Alessia lit a beacon, flame glowing gold, bright enough to be seen from miles away. Not as a warning, but as a welcome. Ravensmoor no longer belonged to darkness. It belonged to the future. Chapter 24, The Coronation of the Night. Ravensmoor had bloomed. But the world beyond its cliffs had noticed. Magic, once dormant, was stirring across the realm. Forests whispered secrets again. Wells glowed at midnight. Ancient things that had slumbered felt the hollow flame rise and turned their gaze toward Alessia Holden. They came not with armies, nor with malice. They came with invitation. On the 7th night after the blood moon passed, a raven arrived with a scroll sealed in moonstone wax. It bore no royal crest, no kingdom's name. Just a single phrase. "The court of shadow and starlight calls you forth." Nicholas read it once. "They know. They felt it," Alessia replied. "And now, they want to witness it themselves." That night, the veil between worlds thinned. In the heart of Ravensmoor's ancient garden, now lush and alive, a circle of white ash trees formed a natural cathedral beneath the stars. And the guests arrived. They did not walk, they shimmered into being. Fey lords in robes of mist and silk. Ghost queens with candle flames for hair. Witches of the hollow veil, their skin etched with constellations. Even a wolf, taller than a man, bowed its great head as it passed Alessia. They were not mortal. They were witnesses of the old world. Alessia wore a gown of starlight, black velvet laced with strands of gold, and a long mantle embroidered with phoenix feathers. Her hair was bound in a crown of roses that bloomed as she walked. Nicholas, at her side, wore silver on silver, a coat tailored like armor, etched with the crest of his line, now crowned with a single gold flame above it. The music was unearthly, flutes and strings that hummed through the air like dreams. They stepped together to the center of the circle. An ancient being stepped forward. Neither man nor woman, their eyes mirrored the night sky. "I am the keeper of the turning veil," they spoke. "You have burned and died. You have loved and broken time. You now stand not as ruler or ruler's bride, but as balance." They turned to Alessia. "Do you swear to guard the old and the new, the hidden and the seen, the dark and the light?" "I swear it," she said, her voice clear. To Nicholas. "Do you swear to walk in light though born of night, to love without chains, to protect without control?" "I do," he replied, steady as moonlight. The keeper lifted their hands, and two crowns formed from starlight and flame. Alessia's, a living crown of phoenix feathers and woven gold fire. Nicholas's, silver branches entwined with black opals and a single, glowing ember at its center. As the crowns settled upon their heads, the stars above shimmered brighter, and every creature in the garden bowed. "Rise, Alessia of the flame and Nicholas of the night," the keeper declared. "Guardians of the realm between. Protectors of balance. Heirs of the ever veil." The wind carried the words far beyond the cliffs. After the rite, the garden bloomed with magic. Lanterns floated into the air, trailing vines of stardust. Spirits danced beside villagers who had wandered into the celebration, not afraid, but enchanted. The great white wolf howled a song of old blessings. Nicholas led Alessia into a dance, just like the waltz at the masquerade, but now, it was no longer cloaked in tension or secrets. This was joy. This was freedom. At the edge of the celebration, the keeper approached Alessia one last time. "You may yet live 1,000 years," they said. "Or merely 100. The hollow flame will let you choose." "I don't need forever," she said, glancing at Nicholas. "I just need the right now." The keeper smiled. "Then you have already mastered the flame." And they vanished into a trail of stars. Chapter 25, Happily Forever After. The stars lingered longer that night over Ravensmoor. As if reluctant to leave. The garden that had once been cursed ground now glowed with life. The phoenix roses Alessia planted bloomed even in moonlight. The wind no longer whispered warnings, but lullabies. A new legend had been born. One that would never again be bound by blood, betrayal, or burning. Alessia Holden stood on the highest tower balcony, a mug of rose tea in hand, watching the sunrise with no fear in her chest. Once, this view had been bleak, grey moors, black trees, fog. Now, the grass shimmered with dew. The orchard had begun to bear fruit. The bees returned in droves. A pair of deer grazed at the edge of the woods. Behind her, soft footsteps padded into the room. "You're up early," said Nicholas Ravensmoor, shirt unbuttoned, hair tousled from sleep. She turned, smiling at the man who had once lived only in darkness. "You're not in the crypt, I see." He smirked. "We both know you wouldn't allow that anymore." They had begun receiving letters, dozens of them. From witches and scholars. From haunted barons and runaway princesses. From distant mountains and hidden forests. Requests for refuge. For wisdom. For guidance. Alessia read one aloud. "If Ravensmoor is truly a place where broken things become beautiful again, may I bring my daughter? She sees ghosts, and they do not frighten her." Nicholas set down his tea. "We'll need more rooms. And more rose bushes," Alessia added. "I want them at every threshold." Though the crypt wedding had been sacred, Nicholas insisted on one more ceremony, for the living. The villagers gathered in the restored courtyard. Cora served as flower girl, scattering petals made of glowing paper. Musicians played under flowering arches. Alessia wore a gown of ivory and silver, stitched by hand from silk and phoenix feathers. Nicholas wore black and gold, regal and soft. They exchanged vows once more, not to defy death or break a curse, but simply to say, "I choose you." Every dawn. Every dusk. Every century if time allows. It didn't take long for stories to spread. The vampire duke who walked in sunlight. The witch bride with fire in her veins and forgiveness in her eyes. The baron who vanished into mist and was never seen again, except in love letters addressed only to A.H. The hall that healed. Children were named Alessia and Ravensmoor in nearby villages. Books were written. Songs composed. Secret societies formed. But Alessia and Nicholas didn't care for the myths. They were too busy planting orchards, training young witches, and dancing barefoot in candlelit rooms for no reason at all. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the blood moon, the manor held a festival. Villagers and magical guests alike arrived with lanterns. Nicholas took Alessia's hand and led her to the center of the ballroom. "Dance with me again," he said. "You never ask. You always just pull me in. This time, I want it to be a choice." She leaned in close and whispered, "It always was." They danced. Not because they were cursed. Not because fate demanded it. But because they had survived it all, and still chose each other. Epilogue. And so the night and the flame, once cursed to destroy, became the protectors of the realm. They were not rulers. They were not martyrs. They were simply this: the Duchess of Midnight and her vampire duke. Beloved, eternal, and finally, happily forever after.
Across every empire, every forgotten age, stories still whisper. If this tale stirred your spirit, leave a like to honor the echoes of the past. Share your thoughts in the comments. Every voice weaves a new legend into the sands of time. And subscribe to our YouTube channel Historical Fantasy Stories, where myths walk beside history, and every discovery changes the world. The next forgotten legend is waiting to be found.